And again, we're going to start at that front foot strike position and just seeing how these back foots are all turned over and how that gets the knee then to really turn over, which then drives that hip forward. Okay. And if we then just kind of take this back and slide over here just a little bit, and we just watch what that foot's doing and how it's driving into our stride, rotating that back foot into our stride. Boom, front foot strike. Same thing over here with DeGrom, watching that back foot turn over, finishing the knees complete rotation, back knees complete rotation, and ultimately, and most importantly, getting that back hip to start to come forward at front foot strike. So then everything can get continually driven out in front as we rotate down and around. Down, out in front as we continue to go through with our energy. Turn your body into a whip. Watching the back foot, how we're turning over, driving through that big toe, into our foot strike. Strong, stable knee. What's it going to do? It's going to lock out. Same thing with the back foot. Driving through that big toe there. Into our front foot strike. So that way that back hip ultimately starts to get driven forward. So then we can finish everything out in front and down that mound. So we can get out in front and down that mound. Driving through that back toe, getting that back hip to start to come forward at front foot strike. So then we can rotate everything down and out in front. Back foot. What's the knee doing during that time? Look at the back knee turning completely over, rotating all the way over. Kneecaps facing back of this heel. Turn that knee all the way over, getting that foot to fold over the big toe. When we do that into our stride, the back hip starts to come forward. So then we can rotate everything down out in front. What's that lead leg doing? Locking out. Back foot, how's it getting there? Driving through the big toe. So that front foot strike, we can then finish everything out in front, down and through. Same thing, watching the back foot, driving into front foot strike, turning over the big toe, getting that back knee all the way rotated so the back hip starts to come forward at front foot strike. So then we can be out in front, locking that leg out. So we can get down through our release. Switching to the side view of everything, and we're just going to first start again with looking at the front foot strike position. So this is, again, the moment in time when Trinan, front foot, makes contact with the ground. And same thing with AJ over here. Excuse me. Once that front foot gets settled on the ground and the knee braces that weight, and we can see that back foot position and how it's driven away from the rubber. How that back foot is driving away from the rubber, which pushes that back hip forward, which pushes that back hip forward at foot strike, forward at foot strike. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. We can also notice at front foot strike that the glove is finished or finishing, and we're looking for that 90-ish degree, being this is the time that the ball is facing the same direction as your chest. So righty's ball at third, lefty's ball facing first. Belt buckle's turned over. And then we'll watch as we go through the throwing motion how this front knee is going to brace itself. It's going to lock out. It's going to stabilize. It's going to block, whatever term you like to think or categorize it as. But that leg goes from a bend to no bend, from a bend to no bend, in order to help get all that energy that the lower body created and send it up into the arm and not allow it to stay down here in the knee and go forward or roll out. This is what allows us to throw the baseball down and out in front as we rotate around. And this is what allows us to rotate down, out in front and around through release. But we got to be able to start feeling ourselves really getting down. Really getting ourselves down at release and out in front with this forward trunk tilt. Our trunk is from our shoulders to our hips. This mass of our body we call our trunk. We want to be taking our trunk at foot strike is usually pretty close to up and down, and then we got to use our trunk to accelerate this throw down and out in front. When that foot lands in ground at front foot strike, we're usually more up and down, and we need to use that trunk to send that ball down and out in front. Next two examples. Oop, I didn't get Chapman a front foot strike yet. My bad. Okay, so if we watch this back foot, how it's just going to drive away from that rubber. Heel's not trying to come up in the air, it's just trying to turn over. What are we turning over? We're turning over the big toe. Watch this little piece of toe here that's in the light. Should turn over. It folds over. The crease in the shoe is folding over that big toe so we can drive through it. And that's the movement that gets this back hip to go forward. That's what finally gets the pelvis to start to rotate forward. Gloves finishing, 90-ish degree angle. Belt buckle, back hips coming through. Over here, watch that back foot. Through the big toe, through the big toe, through the big toe. Also noticing how long this back knee is staying back. Noticing how long this back knee is staying back and not constantly going in, down, as his body's going out. Because if that's the case, his weight's going back, down and out. We need to try to keep that weight back. We need to try to stay in this back hip so we can drive that back hip. So trying to keep that knee above that back foot as long as we can, as best we can. Then when we can't, then it's time to start to rotate. Boom. So then now the knee is strong, and we can see how it's locking out, locking out, locking out. We land at foot strike, and we can see knee holding strong, trying to lock out. Okay. Some more here. Kershaw. Back foot. Boom. Back foot. Boom. Back hip. Go forward. Back hips facing first. Start going forward. Start going forward with the back hip. All because the back foot's doing that. Get the knee to do that, which pushes and drives the pelvis forward. Gloves getting to finish. Arms in that 90-ish. Shoulders have not rotated yet. Shoulders have not rotated yet. Gloves starting to finish. Arms in that 90-ish. Back foot. Boom. 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 So we can see all these guys, different heights, different arm slots, different body shapes, different arm slots. But a lot of the same movements with the back leg, because that's the sequence that we need to do in order to get that back hip to start to come forward. So then the throw, boom, out in front and down. Okay. And then we got one more. Jake Arrieta, same thing. Back foot, 90-ish degree. Glove finishing. Belt buckle, back hip getting forward. We take that back. We watch the back foot. Boom. Boom. So then he can release down and out in front. Leg locking out. Front leg locking out. Front leg locking out. Front leg locking out. And now we can see all of us at our front foot strike position. So take a moment, find where you're at, and then go through those same checkpoints that we just talked about that we want to be seeing at front foot strike. Start from the top and we'll work down. We'll say, oh, I got to sneeze, hold on. Phew. Ooh, excuse me. We'll start with a throwing arm. So we want that to be on a 90-ish degree angle. We can see over here. It would be 90-ish. It's just an illusion because that elbow is starting to come through already because the shoulder's already starting to rotate. Over here, we got 90-ish degrees. Down here, 90. Over here, we can see that elbow is kind of a little low, which gives us a 90 up here, but not so much down here. 90-ish. And then we can see we have a little bit more extreme case of this elbow being very much below the elbow. Another case over here, the elbow being very much below the shoulder. So we will want to talk about that when we get to your individual videos, why we think that's occurring with us, of our elbow kind of dropping down before we start to rotate around, which is going to make it a little bit more difficult for us to throw the baseball down if the elbow is down, and we're going to rotate, and that will probably send it up a little bit, which will make it a little more difficult to accelerate things out in front. But we will see when we get into your individual video about that. Then we look at the glove like we talked about in the front view. Good, 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 going to be good. Little far away from our body at this point in time. Little far away from our body at this point in time. But what we saw from the front view was pretty stable with it. What we saw from the front view, it being out this far and continuing to swoop out that far, sent our body out that way as well. So then if we go down from there, we're looking for our trunk, or from our shoulders to our hips, this part of our body here, our torso, it should be to us. So we can see that the 5 tool is still to us. Baseball is still to us. We can see the 24 wants to start to creep around, but for the most part, it's still to us. We can see how much the shoulders have rotated here. We can see the front shoulders opening up, back shoulders starting to come through. We can see the front shoulders starting to want to open up, but the back shoulder does not want to come through quite yet, keeping the shoulders in a better position. Upper body's in a great position over here. We can read the whole upper body. Same here. We can read the whole upper body. Same here. We can read the whole upper body. Same here. We can read the whole upper body. And pretty good job here of seeing the whole upper body. Then we go down to that. We want to see belt buckle to the catcher. Yes, belt buckle to the catcher. We don't have a belt buckle on, but we can assume that with this here and this here, that the belt buckle is probably more in line of like here, going this way. So not quite there. We go over to here, same thing. We don't have a belt on, but we can assume this belt buckle with this and what this is looking like to be kind of in the same thing, probably more in like this direction over here. Belt buckle very much to us. Belt buckle very much, if you had one on, to the catcher, like we saw, like we said from the front view. Belt buckles to us. Belt buckle, we can see there's a seam of the pants, so we know it's not really rotated forward very much at all. Black pants, like we said from the front view, is tough to tell with this kind of stuff, especially when the shirt's not tucked in. Makes it difficult to see those kind of checkpoints there with that. So we're not all too sure. We'll have to use context clues once we get into the breakdown of yours to know that. We look over here. We see belt buckle is definitely to the target. We go from that, seeing the back hip, yes, it's starting to go forward. Back hip, no. Back hip, yes. Back hip, probably no, but we can't know for sure with what we're wearing. Back hip is not quite there, and we definitely have been reconfirmed that because of the front view. Back hip coming through, maybe, probably. Can't tell because the shirt's not tucked in, or are we wearing baseball pants and a belt. Same over here, but we do know that we can see logo on the front of your shorts here, so it's going to be tough to say that if this logo that's in the front of your shorts is still to us, that this hip is probably still has not rotated yet, because if it was going forward, this logo would be more towards this way. Back hip, no. Back hip, no. Don't know. No, no, yes, yes. So we got a couple guys who are able to get that back hip through at this point in time, which is fantastic. Now, we'll be able to know that they got that back hip through by looking at a particular part of the delivery. And that's, did we drive through that big toe like we talked about? Did we drive through that big toe into foot strike? Through that big toe, through that big toe, through that big toe. Because once you drive through that big toe into front foot strike, boom, back hip starts to go forward. So this back hip's forward. So let's watch what this back foot's doing. It's driving through that big toe, through that big toe, into foot strike, into foot strike, into foot strike, into foot strike, which helps get the back hip to start going forward. All right, so then if we look at some of the guys that we know that the back hip hasn't gone forward, we can look at the position that their back foot is in here, and we know that's why the back hip hasn't started to go forward yet at front foot strike. It would there. And what's the back foot doing there? It's doing that movement that we see here and that we see here. So we said that the hips get turned over well, but we don't drive well, like we talked about here. And then we'll see, boom, then it happens. Boom, then it happens. But now the foot's just kind of Michael Jackson moonwalking behind you underneath your body. Just kind of right there. Instead of it being able to drive our body forward and it be staying on the ground, because we would be driving our body forward because the brakes wouldn't be put on yet. All right, so that is the back hip. That's also the back foot. You guys can see now, back foot hasn't done anything at front foot strike. Now it's starting to do it, but it's way too late. And then obviously looking at your front knee then. And for the guys in the front view that saw that their knee was swiveling, rolling, bending, giving, going out towards glove side while we were throwing, you can just see now kneecap over here. We can see the top of the kneecap over here a bit. We can see kneecap over here a bit. We can see kneecap a little bit over here. But over here, we know kneecap's going straight to that target. We know over here, kneecap's going straight to that target. We know over here, even though that kneecap is not, the leg is across the body, we know that kneecap is still going straight forward in its alignment. All right, so now that we've gotten a chance to take a look and hear from top to bottom of that, give yourself a moment to take inventory of your own. See maybe something that you don't do well. Find someone that's in this here that does do it well. See what it looks like. So that way, as we start to play these videos, we can be looking at the guys that are in some of these good checkpoints, and then we can watch how they get into it when it starts to loop and what it looks like out of that position while it's looping when it's good versus what yours looks like in a not good position. All right, so now we got you guys' videos looping through here. So go ahead and start taking a look at how your body's flowing here from the side. Comparing that to what we just saw with those big league videos. Seeing now what was discussed from the front view and how then that looks from the side view. Seeing overall how our energy is flowing. And we will, just like the front view, go through one at a time and get a little bit of information for each of you guys here. And we will start up top and we'll go from there. So let's get you a little bigger, bud. So right there. So we can see we got that good rhythm with that hand lift, or the hand raise and the leg lift. For all of us that may need to think about our hand separation, this is a good example right here. Ball falls out of the glove. We see the top of the hand is here, facing third. Ball is to first for righties. In fact, all of you guys are righties on this squad, I believe. So it would be a same message for everyone. Ball is to first, top of the hand is to third. And we want to try to maintain that wrist position as our arm goes through whatever type of arm motion it may want to go through, but making sure that this hand stays in this type of fashion. So that way, when it does flip up, boom, it'll flip back, boom, and then we'll be whippy and loose through release, helping ensure a nice, clean, smooth moving arm that's going to help minimize stress, which helps reduce injury. All right, so for the top of the leg lift, we can see that the hips want to start to go. The hips want to start to go. They want to start to go. So now we start to get some momentum. We're getting some momentum. We're getting some momentum. But it's not as much as we potentially could. Because if we look at the head in general, it's more or less just going down, 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 down. And now we're starting to get it go out, but it's more just out, 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 out. But we got to understand we're going down a lot more in this stride than we think we are, because it's going to hit down here. And I think your body is not used to it hitting down here, and that's why we start to open up a little early with the upper body. So I think if we were able to, leg is about here, we start to let this hip start to fall forward, start to glide forward. So that way our body is starting to go forward a little bit as this leg continues to go up. So now the head would be here maybe. So then as we start to gain a little momentum, instead of us going straight down, 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 we'd be going down, yeah, but we'd also be slightly going out as well because that momentum would carry and continue as we sat down. So I think a little bit of more early momentum in the beginning of our delivery will help us get this lower body to drive a little bit more aggressively, which will get that foot into the ground maybe a little bit sooner, a little bit quicker, a little bit earlier. So that way, when this foot is where this upper body is at right now, our front foot would actually be in the ground. But we'll see that the foot doesn't get in the ground until now, and that upper body just started to rotate a little bit early because of that extra time there. Lower body does all the good movements. The upper body is in great positions. We're just slightly off. Our front leg hits and it locks out real well. Everything that we're doing is really, really well, really, really good. Our body's moving great. It's just the timing we can improve on. Our timing could be a little better by just getting a little bit more energy going towards the target during the top of the leg lift. So as the leg's coming down, our body doesn't go just straight down, 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 but we'll have a slight out as we're also going down. So that way when it's time to go out, it's not just straight out, 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 but we can go out and slightly still down, down, down a little bit. Another thing we can think about is trying to... no, I don't want to mention that because we don't think we need to. All right, so that's just our main thing right there. Is just try to get our hips going forward a little bit before that leg gets to the top of its leg lift so we can have a little bit of momentum forward. So when we sit, we're gaining ground and not just sitting straight down. All right, so we can see here from this view then how much we're kind of rocking towards me and up from this set position, especially those hips, especially that back knee. A lot of stuff going on with this type of set position to get the leg up to here. But we'll continue from there. We can see we're kind of just going down, 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 down. Where another guy is going down, 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 before we ever get any momentum to go out, 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 out. So now we're just using my front leg. We're just using that front leg. We can see our body does not start to go forward at all, really, until this front leg is so far in front of our body that it now swoops around, swoops around, swoops around, and that's what gets our body starting to go. A little bit difficult then for our back leg to drive and rotate. It gets a little bit stuck, and that's when it just kind of folds over more than it's driving through, more than it's driving through. It wants to drive through. It wants to drive through. But the front foot just hit the ground way too early for it. Even though we have a very long stride, we did not have time for the back leg to drive. Why did the back leg not have time to drive? Well, because this front foot got out in front so quickly and just dominated the weight transfer. Our weight's back right now, but now it's not. Now it's already forward, and now it's in the ground. So, again, just like we talked about up here with, Wiecowski, I believe it is, and I apologize if that's not how you say it. I believe it is Wiecowski or something ski. How we were talking about him going down, 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 and then out. Is the same thing applies here, but you go even down more before you go out because you're able to hunch over more because of your arm slot. Your arm slot is more
Is more wanting to be in this type of a hunch position. It's a little bit easier for the body to rotate from here through here if it's here. If it was tall, it'd be very difficult to get down to here. So the hunch of your body getting to here needs to happen for that arm slot, for sure. For sure. But do we need to be getting into it at this point in time and then holding it? I don't think so. I think we could be a little bit taller as we hold this position, and instead of going straight down, then out, we're going down and out. Going more down and out instead of down, then out. Down and out. So two guys right next to each other can benefit from the same mechanical adjustment. But again, another guy, ball falls out of the glove well, stays in this type of position very well, which then helps it be a good, smooth moving arm through release. Another guy who does a good job of trying to lock that front leg out. It's a little late getting there. Why is it a little late getting there? Because we talked about that front knee having to kind of swivel, 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 swivel. Why is it swiveling? Because it wasn't over there to begin with. What energy is creating it or forcing it to swivel? It's the back hip coming through. Why is the back hip coming through after that front foot's on the ground? Because the back foot didn't drive through the big toe until after the front foot was on the ground. So now all that energy is coming after. And unfortunately, the upper body was rotating during that time. So now it doesn't get to use it as much. So then we're just a little late to locking out. But if that knee didn't have to swivel, 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 and it just landed already there, here, then it would lock out by this time right now instead of it locking out by that time there. So it's a timing thing. Your body does those movements really well. It's just a little late. How are we going to get it to be on time? Well, we just need to create a little momentum in the beginning of your delivery. How are we going to create momentum in the beginning of your delivery? We're going to get the hips going before the leg gets to the very top of its delivery. Next. Okay, so from top of leg lift, we kind of see that hunch that we kind of start with, and we can kind of see how this body is having to rock back. All right. One of the things that we talked about is that we're playing this game, and the base runners are only going to be getting smarter. Right? The base runners are only seeing pictures more on the base pass the more they play the game. And one of the things that we need to make sure of is that we're not giving them this type of advantage of being able to see our whole body having to start to rock back before we even get that foot off the ground. Okay? We need to start with that weight already back. When you see the body wants to be back, but this knee is just kind of already in. We just need to be back. Once that knee is back, that'll be able to set the weight more back. And we can see as we rock back, what's this knee doing? This knee is going back. So this knee could already be back here with that foot in the ground. We wouldn't have to rock like that. We'd be able to get it up a little bit more efficiently and a little bit quicker. So that's a set position thing we want to think about there. As we go out, another guy, good hand separation here. Ball falling out of the glove. Wrist trying to stay in that position as much as we can, but we can see how it kind of opens up here. Now the ball is facing second, which means that it's going to have to turn again. And see how it turned again? Now it's up here already. So if the ball faces second base, it's not going to flip up. What do we mean by flipping up? We look at here. This hand is going to flip up and then throw. We look over here, and what's the hand going to do? The hand is going to flip up to then throw. All right, we can even look over here. We haven't gotten to this yet, but we can look right there and see that the hand's going to flip up to throw. because your hand did not stay in this type of position, your wrist didn't stay with top of hand to third, ball to first, and instead it got to ball to second, top of hand to home, the hand is not going to flip up. It's already now up. And now that since the hand is already up, it's going to kind of just drag through. It's just going to kind of drag through. And now this is when we kind of get around the baseball more likely than not. That can happen here. And we also add a little extra stress on the arm, specifically and more often than not through the elbow area, when we are a guy that hand gets above the elbow well before front foot strike. That reduces our arm's ability to whip. All right, so another example, or a guy that's like you, is down here. And we talked about that from the front view down here, that ball is not in the right position. So now that hand gets above the elbow and it doesn't flip up to lay back to whip forward. And it just kind of stays up, drags forward, and then we either push it or we get around it in that type of instance. So we are going to want to think about set position and wrist position during our arm path so that it doesn't open up and create our arm to be in this type of position so early in our deliveries process, because now it's up and now it's just going to kind of drag through, which just increases our chance of arm issues. All right, but what does our body do well? We can see that front leg wants to lock out, wants to lock out, wants to lock out. It's just a little late getting there. Why is it a little late getting there? Well, it's like some of the other guys we talked about. This front knee isn't rotated enough, and we knew that from the front view at front foot strike. So now at the foot is in the ground. We see where the kneecap's at. We watch the kneecap swivels out. Now that it's swiveled out, it's stable. So we need to land it in this stable position, not get it to an unstable position to swivel it to stable. We want to land in a stable position, because once you're able to get it stable, you're able to lock it out. And we just need to be able to lock it out a lot sooner, not hit, swivel, stabilize, lock out. We need to front foot strike, hit, be stable, lock it out, throw the baseball. So it's a timing thing. We're just late, and we're late because the knee's not rotating enough. You see the back foot wants to do the drive through the big toe, wants to drive through the big toe. It wants to. There's just not quite enough time for it to do it maybe as much as it could. And we would have more time if this knee was continuing to rotate, because that would not allow the foot to be in the ground yet. So if the foot's not in the ground yet, that means our body is able to continue to go forward. And how are we going forward right now? We're going forward because we're driving through that big toe. So we can see it's just mostly a timing thing. So we need to think set position so we don't have to rock back. So we don't have to rock back as much. And then thinking wrist position during hand separation, so that the way the ball doesn't turn over like that. Once the ball turns over like that, it's going to get above the elbow. Now the hand's above the elbow too early. And now we're going to kind of get a little draggy. We're going to get a little draggy instead of whippy as we're throwing. And when the arm drags like that, it just increases our stress on the arm. And we're trying to learn how to minimize that stress on our arms so that way we have longevity. All right, so from the top, we'll be able to see, like we talked about, your hip is getting out in front. All right, so we're gaining more momentum than I thought we were. We're able to gain more ground towards the target than I thought we were from the front view. So that's good. Okay, so we are not just going down, but we're trying to get ourselves out as we're also going down. One thing I want to call attention to you is this back knee, and just kind of watching how quickly and how often it's just kind of folding or falling inwards. Boom. It's already in. right? And from the front view, we already talked about what what the front leg here needs to do more of. And we can see it here, how it just doesn't really rotate by the time that inside of the front foot hits the ground. Now it's got to do all that rotation after, and the ball's well out of our hands by that time. Okay, so we can see that now from the side view, but we've already been able to talk about that a lot in detail from the front view. So I want to be able to focus on the back leg now, since we can see that easier here. And we need to see how the knee just goes in, which is ultimately going to make it harder for us to rotate this knee, and even more difficult to drive off this back leg if all of our body's weight is now going forward of this knee instead of trying to stay more like knee back. Trying to see who else. Trying to keep this knee more back. Trying to keep this knee more back versus this knee already falling in. Because if the knee can stay back, then we can rotate it better. If the knee stays back, we'll have a better chance to rotate it better. If the knee stays back, we'll have a better chance to rotate it forward. But if the knee's already falling in, it's going to be hard to rotate it in. And we can see as you're trying to rotate it in, you're trying to rotate it in, you're trying to rotate it in, but the foot's almost already fully in the ground by this time. Boom. So we're just late with that backside drive, and we're late with the front side leg opening up. So a lot of stuff that we need to think about with our lower body and learning how to rotate it, learning the timing and the feeling of that, and getting our lower body to be in a good front foot strike position, and learning what that's going to feel like to make throws out of versus you feeling yourself making throws from this type of position, feeling your entire body always moving, always rotating while you're trying to throw, versus that lower body doing 85-90% of its rotation already. Then we throw with that extra last little bit of its rotation. So just a lot of lower body rotation work we're going to have to do. Okay. Start from the top. Okay, so like we said from the front view, it looked like we were getting the leg all the way up and down before we started to gain any ground to the target. And we can see that our body just doesn't really go anywhere until now. Now it's starting to go somewhere. Now it's starting to gain some ground. Now it's starting to gain some ground. Now we're starting to get that back hip to go forward. Now that front hip is gaining ground. But like we said, unfortunately, by the time that happens, this front foot is so far in front of our body that it's going to start to take over. And it's going to start to open up. It's going to start to open up. It's going to start to open up. And as the front leg starts to open up, we can see that the glove is very much in sync with it. And that glove opens up, opens up, opens up. And then you can see if I go too far, that glove is like, oh no, don't keep going. Don't keep going, glove. Don't keep going, glove. Don't keep going over there. Because at some point we need to stop in line with our target, so that way energy doesn't keep going towards that pitching machine, but it can get redirected towards our target. So like we talked about, we need to think about getting our hips going. We need to start gaining ground. We need to start going to the target before we get all the way into our hip sit here. Because it's going to take a very explosive athlete to be able to drive through this in time. And then we add on top of that your front leg wanting to get way in front of you, really quickly getting in front of you, versus trying to keep this back leg or this leg lift leg behind your hip a little bit longer. Trying to keep your leg lift leg foot from getting in front of your hip so soon is going to help keep ourselves back better. And if we stay back better, we can drive forward better. But what we can also notice is you're another guy with arm path or with your wrist. Okay, the ball is coming out of your glove and you got ball facing third, top of hand facing first, which, as we've been hearing, is the opposite of what we're looking for. So you're pulling this ball out of your glove. We want to just let the ball fall out of our glove. You're pulling it out. We want it to just separate and fall out. Because now that ball is facing second base, which means now that hand is above the elbow, which means now it's not going to whip. It's just going to kind of push. We're just going to kind of push it, kind of pushing it, which is minimizing our velocity and adding stress to the arm. If we want to have a compact arm, that is fine. There's nothing wrong with having a compact arm, but we need to make sure that the hand does not get above the elbow right away. We need to keep an elbow above the hand. We need to think about the elbow staying above the hand for as long as we can. Boom. Now we're in this position, but look how far we've gone through the delivery. We come over here. Boom. In that type of position, but look how far he's through his delivery. We look at yours at the time that your wrist is at this type of position. It's right here. And we can see foot strike. Foot strike. And then for you, it's just now foot strike. So that arm is just hanging up there for a long time, doing a whole lot of nothing up in a throwing position already. We're trying to have that arm just be relaxed and dangling and loose so that they can whip. Because in order to have the hand above the elbow in this type of position, that shoulder is tight and tense. But if the hand is below the elbow, this arm is just dangling relaxed. And a dangling and relaxed arm can be whippy in quick arms. So we're going to want to think about some arm path drills for you, specifically thinking about that wrist and how it's coming out of the glove and how we're separating our hands. Some hand separation drills and some arm path drills. So that way we can clean this up a little bit so we can get some whip in your arm and not this kind of pushy dragginess that we currently are seeing. All right, so we can see that spin, that turn, that twist, and how your belt buckle is not a second base, your kneecap's not a second base, your shoulders or your chest is facing second base, how you quite turned your whole upper body and leg 90 degrees backwards. And now it's going to very quickly just come, boom, right back to here. And because that leg's now gone from here to here, the hips have now rotated already, wham, 90 degrees, which means they're probably going to want to continue to rotate very quickly. And once they rotate a certain distance, that shoulder is going to start to get involved. And that's when we can see the glove that now has gone from here to 90 degrees to 180 degrees, can't stop. And now it's going to like 200 degrees. And that's what opens up our front shoulder, boom, at front foot strike. That's what starts to bring our back shoulder through at front foot strike. Just a little early. We can also see that the back hip hasn't come through. Why hasn't the back hip has not come through yet? Because we haven't driven through the big toe of our foot yet. But you can just see that the heel has just come up. The heel is just coming up. The heel is just coming up. Why is the heel coming up? Well, we had so much of this energy just swiveling around that back knee starts to swivel around. And that kind of just lifts up that heel a little early on you. Because the knee is swiveling around instead of driving forward. It's swiveling around a little bit. So then the front foot does hit the ground. We haven't driven through the big toe yet. Now we're trying to drive through, but again, we're kind of like just moonwalking it, just gliding underneath ourselves because of that fact that the brakes are already on. If we were able to drive through the big toe with this front foot still off the ground, we would gain some more ground. The back hip would be able to come through. Then we'd hit the ground. This front knee would probably rotate more. We'd be in a better, stronger position there. And then we'd be able to come through with better forward down direction. So another guy is just, we stay back well. We just need to drive better. And right now we can see the knees going in, but we're just not driving. We need to start driving off that foot. We need to learn how to drive through that big toe. We just need to learn how to drive through that big toe, and we'll be there. Because what we do up top with the arm path is good. We try to lock that leg out, but we can see again from here how we're trying to lock it out, and then it's like, okay, here's the angle of which I would be stretching my hamstring. My chest is going to continue to go down, but we can see that angle doesn't want to increase. So maybe is it my hamstring is not flexible enough, or is it not strong enough? We're not quite sure. As Y2 gives out like that and doesn't maintain its locked out position all the way through like we see more up here. Or like we see more down here. So just thinking about maybe not twisting like that, so that way we don't open up as early and as quickly, so that way the front shoulder doesn't open up early as quickly, which then hopefully will help us with the back foot, but we're just going to have to learn overall that movement of driving through that, moving through that big toe a little bit better. So that's going to be our main focus, is to be driving through that back foot, driving through our big toe into foot strike, and not getting foot strike and then big toe driving through. All right, so from the top, we can kind of see that hunch, 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 hunch going on during the top of your leg lift. We can also see, look at your foot, your back foot, watch the heel during the hunch. It's kicking out, it's kicking out, it's kicking out, it's kicking out, it's kicking out. So our straight has now changed. Our straight is now no longer to the target. It's slightly off, which is going to change things a little bit for us. Okay. Another thing we want to think about is look how many fingers you got in this baseball. Your pinky's on the ball, your ring finger's on the ball, middle finger's on the ball, index finger's on the ball, thumb's on the ball. We got fingers almost equally spaced around this ball the entire time. That's like a change-up grip. Okay. So we want to talk about fastball grip. We need to think about pinky not on the ball. Pinky's just resting up against the ring finger. We want the ring finger to just be like supporting on the side of the baseball, on the side of our finger. We want our thumb underneath the baseball. So our two fingers are up here. We want our thumb more down here where your pinky is. But we got good glove separation. We got good glove swivel. We can see when that foot hits the ground, the belt buckle's going. The big toe wants to drive. It wants to, but the brakes are being applied too soon. So that way when it actually drives, it just kicks underneath. It just moonwalks. It just glides underneath instead of driving my body more forward, creating more power to my target. And it's not going more to my target because I can't go anywhere because the front foot's already down. So we're not driving through our big toe in time. We got to drive into front foot strike. Drive into front foot strike. Not front foot strike. Now try to drive. Now it's too late. All right, so that's a timing thing. We do a good job of staying back with the knee. We do a good job trying to stay back with the knee. But we're, again, a guy who, we're tall, we hunch, and now we don't really get to go anywhere very quickly. And now it's trying to go with not as much momentum. So if we don't have that much momentum, it's going to be hard for us to drive off that back foot because we're driving from nothing. Or we can drive from momentum, which makes it easier to do. So we're going to be a guy that needs to get going before this leg starts to come down. And it's going to be a lot easier to get going if we're not already going down, down, down because of a hunch. Down, down, down because of a hunch. We got to just raise that leg up to our body, not make the body go to the leg. Because then that messes up the heel. Then we don't get to drive on time. And it just messes up our timing at the end there. We're close. We got a lot of good stuff happening. We just gotta clean up the leg lift so we can hopefully then have better ability to drive off that back foot in time. Okay, so from the top, you see the legs up, leg is going down, 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 and you haven't gone anywhere. Your body hasn't gone down, your body hasn't gone out. We're just there. Now we're going down, 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 down before we start to ever go out. Okay, so now we're sitting in that back hip real well. We're keeping this back knee back real well. We're keeping this glove in a position to keep our shoulders closed real well. That hand's falling out of the glove in a great position. This front leg is trying to stay closed very, very well. But if we are going to be having very little momentum created and only going off of our strength from this position, we're going to have to be a super strong, super explosive dude. Okay? So now we're going to go and we're going to see, boom, front foot's hitting the ground before this foot turns over. Our front foot is hitting the ground, the inside of the foot, then the full foot, then the knee swivels out, then the back hip comes through. And we can see we're another guy that because we didn't drive through the big toe before the front foot hits, when we do that time, or when the time does get to where we can drive through the big toe, we can't drive through the big toe because the big toe's moving. It's gliding, it's sliding, it's moonwalking underneath us. We got to be able to do this movement here before this front foot hits the ground, so that way it's not doing it in the air, in the air, in the air. We got to rotate into our front foot strike. So there's another guy that needs to do some backside drive drills to learn how to drive through that big toe, to get the back hip to come through, start to get the back hip to go forward at front foot strike. And then we can see, like we talked about in the front view, how everything just kind of just stops rotating. That back hip, which is facing us right now, still facing us right now, just never really continues to rotate around. Like we see here, continuing to rotate around. Or like we see here, continuing to rotate around. Let's see. Or we see here wanting to continue to rotate around. All right. Is this Height down here? It's kind of in the same boat as you as well, where that hip just kind of stalls out from wanting to continue to accelerate around. And the reason it's struggling to continue to accelerate around is probably due, in fact, that the back foot isn't driving us forward at all. It's not helping us rotate that back hip forward, which then doesn't create enough power rotationally to make that back hip want to continue to go. Instead, we're able to slow it down and stop it very easily instead of needing a lot more time to get it to slow down because it was moving so much more aggressively. So that's a theory as to why that hip kind of stalls out there, is because we're just not driving that back hip forward into front foot strike, which means it's not going to be able to come through as aggressively as we rotate those shoulders the rest of the way through and finish, which then results in it just kind of stalling out right there and then just foot just kind of getting put down. Last but not least, over here. So we go from, again, we can see another very minimal leg lift, which is going to help hurt us with our timing. We can also see how that ball is coming out of your glove. Ball is to second. Now ball is to us. All right. And that's why your arm is able to get so far behind your chest, or I'm sorry, so far behind your back, is because of the position your wrist is in. It just allows the arm to go further back. If your hand was coming out of your glove like this, like this, like this, instead of like this, where your top of your hand is to second, balls to home, versus top of your hand to third, ball to first, and it stayed in that type of position, the arm would still be able to get behind you. The arm's still getting behind them. The arm's still getting behind them. Arm's still getting behind them. Not so much on this one because it turns over. Why? Because look, the ball's going to second. But you're getting your arm behind you, but it's because of your wrist position, it's able to get so far behind you that now as it starts to rotate, it's now just behind. It's already up and behind versus going flipping up. Who else could we say? Down, top of the wrist. So then it can flip up. It can flip up to then lay back. It can then flip up to then lay back. It can then flip up to then lay back. Because of your hand's position and how far back it's behind your body, it's going to flip up right now. And now it's just kind of in this bigger angle here, which is going to cause a little bit more of a drag and a push. More of a drag and a push. More of a drag and a push than the rotate to throw. The rotate to throw. It's more of a push than a rotate to throw. Than a rotate to throw. So, arm path is not the issue. The path is clean. The path is good. It's just the wrist position allows the path to get so much further than it should, which then allows the arm to continue, or the wrist to continue to rotate in a position that allows the arm to continue to go even further towards first base. And now that the hand has gotten to that position is what then causes the early flip. So if we were just able to let the ball fall out of our glove here, be able to fall out of the glove with the top of the hand there, have the ball fall out of the glove with the top of the hand there, have the ball fall out of the glove with the top of the hand there, versus there, this sets up the opportunity for this arm to swing back behind your back a lot more than this position does. Boom, it's still getting loaded back. Boom, it's still getting loaded back. Boom, it's still getting loaded back. But it's just not getting loaded back way back there. Because now we can see they're flipping up. You're flipping up. Flipping up. Flipping up. It's just you are so far behind yourself that that's why we're in this type of angle versus more of a 90-90-ish, 90-ish, 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 90-ish angle. Which then is why the whip, and the whip that they're able to get looks very different than the push that you kind of get. So, arm path. Wrist position is the main thing. It's going to manipulate our arm's path, but I don't think we're going to want to or even have to focus on the path that our arm is taking. I think just by where our wrist is at and keeping our wrist in that position as your arm goes through that movement there, that path there, where the wrist is at will just limit, prevent, prohibit the arm from getting so far behind your body. So that way it won't flip up so early and behind yourself, but it'll flip up more like the three guys we looked at over here.